We're building for ego, but we're looking for shortcuts. People are looking for shortcuts just for the sake of saying we blew a lower number or we built it tighter. They're not building for the reason, again, of I want that indoor air quality to be cleaner. I want it to be better. I want it to allow my homeowner to feel a sense of clarity that the 22,000 breaths that they're going to take every day in that house is not going to be filled with particulate matter that's going to make them sick. We're focused on building it tight, but why? We're focused on blowing a zero ACH, but why? We should build for human biology and for the benefit of our longevity, for our health, for our wellness, and creating an environment that is designed to allow us to live at our peak. That should be our why as builders.
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Krisa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
Well, hey there, friend. Michael Krisa here. And in this week's episode of Builder Straight Talk, I have a conversation with a gentleman by the name of Brad Robinson. And he is the founder of Bradford Custom Homes. And his thing is performance homes. Now, Michael, what do you mean by that? Well, he's not chasing ego. It's not about numbers for ego's sake, but it's about building around human biology, longevity, everyday performance. And it's from light, air, water quality to systems that support sleep, focus, and longevity and long-term health. And he sits at that crossroad of innovation, discipline, and intention. So in this conversation, we talked about things like why performance homes are the floor, not the ceiling, how biology first design is shaping the future of luxury building, and the real difference between building science and building for people. I mean, how cool is that differentiation? And so much more. And speaking of so much more, pretty please, with the click of your mouse, subscribe, like, and share. Subscribe, like, and share, because that will help so much more builders be able to experience what we're doing here at Builder Straight Talk. Remember, there's no commercials here, no ads. It's about your benevolence, if you will, to spread the word so other builders can experience what we're doing here. So again, simple click of the mouse, subscribe, like, and share. And without further ado, let's jump into this conversation I know you're going to enjoy with Brad Robinson of Bradford Custom Homes. Mr. Brad Robinson, I'm excited to have you on the call today. I know you're a busy guy and you've got buyers waiting, your team is waiting. So, let's pop the brakes on this, man, and just jump right into it.
I love it. Let's do it. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, man, no, it's my pleasure. My pleasure, absolutely. Before we get rocking and rolling here, no ego here. Give us a bit of the elevator pitch. Let's say you're on the 7th floor working your way down. Tell us a little bit about who you are, the market that you're in, and maybe some production numbers like yearly amount of builds and a price point.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, again, thanks for having me. My name is Brad Robinson. I'm the president and founder of Bradford Custom Homes and Remodeling down here in Atlanta, Georgia. We're a luxury custom home builder that operates more like a owner's representative service than we do like a traditional builder or boutique builder firm. So we service the Atlanta market. We also have operations in Charleston, South Carolina. And we also build for some of our clients up in the Highlands, Cashers area in the Western Carolina foothills. So as a typical year for us, and this year in 26 is not typical at all, we've got a pretty significant backlog and are projecting to build somewhere close to 14 homes, which will be on the larger side of things for us this year. Typical price point starting somewhere around the $2 million price point, and then some that go all the way up to better than 10 million. We're very fortunate to be able to bring these visions for our clients together. But what I'm most excited about going into this year is our commitment to the well-built environment and building for biology's sake and not building for building science sake. So that's really what's going on for us this year.
Cool. We'll unpack that. 2 to 10 million. If I had known, I would have wore a tie or something.
You know, we're just people.
Yeah.
We just live in different houses.
Are you doing any production build as well or strictly custom?
Not at all. So we're a completely custom outfit. We are introducing a few specs this year, but I do not look at that as production at all. These are one-offs from some of the best and brightest architects and engineers in the Southeast in the country bringing these projects to life. And we're doing it in the same fashion we would do as if we had a client on board.
I want to put a pin on that topic. I want to come back to it because it's really intriguing for me. But let's go back to humble beginnings. Once upon a time, before building was even in your head, what were you doing? What was the previous life of Brad like?
I would say that building is in my blood. I come from a family of blue collar, working class folks. My mom ended up remarrying when I was in, middle school sometime. And her husband was in the grading and hauling business. And so I got to see site development work happening for some of the coolest buildings in the Atlanta market growing up. I learned how to drive a dump truck on Hartsfield Jackson International Airport. So that was my first time grinding some gears in a big truck. And fast forward into graduating high school and coming out of college, I started a trades-based business. I was doing turnkey drywall and painting for other custom home builders in town, and looking through the lens of just the humble trades guy selling into these large, massive, expansive, beautiful mansions. I'd never seen anything like it in my life, and kind of coming into the business and having opportunity with these, the amazing builders that I got to service every day, it just sparked an imagination that has yet to unravel.
Man, so how do you go from how do I say this politely? And I don't care about politically correct. The cojones drop that you've got the confidence to jump into doing these high end custom homes, or was there a lower price point to first meddle in, if you will, to hone your craft and then move up?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, it's funny because in 2008, we were operating and servicing these home builders. And as the market shifted in order to survive, we were out there selling residential repainting services. We were doing independent service work, replacing windows. We started doing siding. And then all of a sudden, you start getting into decks and structure. And then I said, well, I'm going to go get my license so that I can do this legitimately, number one. But number two, digging my heels into that and beginning to unpackage the whole construction environment around me, my mind went wild. And so I quickly went from decks to additions and I got to play in the dirt. That's really where I think it unleashed. And I said, you know what, I'm completely capable. This is something that is within me, and I know that I can learn it. And I did. I quickly was a student of construction. Fast forward to 2014, had an opportunity come my way, as many business owners do, and brought that business back from, the 2008, 2009, 2010, slump into a business that was doing better, more sustainable. But the numbers really hadn't peaked back to where we were. I mean, I think I had that business up to a little bit north of 18 million per year in revenue. And I found myself looking down the barrel of being able to sell that business. And so I made my first exit in 2014 by selling off that company. So lots and lots and lots of learning throughout the course of those years. But I got to start doing some investing of my own at that point, and doing some flips and doing some cooler projects.
Cool. Well, kudos to you for surviving '08, because a lot of builders hung up their hammer. So the fact that you kept persevering tells me a lot about your character. And I use this analogy too much. I've got to come up with a new one, but it's, rough seas make for good sailors.
It's so true. I cut my teeth in some of the hardest years. I don't look at the market conditions as something that's happened to my generation as a reason for me being successful or not successful. Like, I'm the only person that's going to be able to dictate that at the end of the day. So, look, I got a lot of grit. I got a lot of grind. I got a lot of hours, behind the keyboard, and I got a lot of hours on the phone. Nobody gave it to me. I'll put it to you that way.
Well, the fact that you own your own business, you've got people working for you. You don't have the luxury of the what is it? The pity culture, right?
No such
You got to
thing.
hustle.
Yeah, I mean, I have, when I think about the 22 employees we have and you expand that out to their spouses, that becomes 40 really quick. And then you expand that out to children and that becomes 100. And then you realize, 5:30 might not be early enough. I got 100 people relying on me getting out of this bed and doing something.
Oh no,
So
man! I'll push back. You've got more than 100 people relying on you, because when you step onto that build lot and you start your construction process, you've got all the trades that are working for you. You've got the coffee truck. You have all the local businesses that are relying on you to buy stuff. Your guys that are getting paid now are spending their money in the local economy. They potentially are going to buy a house. So on that side of the firewall, you've got an immediate impact. On the other side, the people that can afford your homes, and then let's go back. I'm looking at any builder and I get excited about this because I'm trying to reinstill the nobility of the craft. Because I think too many builders think, oh, I'm just banging nails, but it's a noble profession. And we have to reinstill that into a whole generation. On the other side of that mirror, if you will, Allison and the mirror, no, Alice in the Wonder Glass,
Wonderland, I think
yeah,
is
you
where
know
you're
where I'm
going.
going. Yeah. I've been drinking gin too early in the day. On the consumer side, you've got people that have been saving and scrimping to be able to buy one of your homes. And I don't know about you, but to save $50,000, $60,000 a year, that's a bit of a challenge for me. But if you look at the average home being, let's just say 500,000, nice round number, appreciation on average being 10, it's accruing 50,000 every year. And you did that. You made that possible for these people that have moved in. Not only have you given them a roof over their head, you've given them stories to tell, families to raise, and there's this income that just accruing in the background until the day comes when they say, okay, we're going to sell. They've created generational wealth that they would have never been able to do. And I know I'm rambling here, but I'm still looking for that name. What's that title that we can put onto a builder? Because I put it akin to a hero in terms of what you do when you do what you do.
Man, I do not have that name. I oftentimes just think about myself as a humble Sherpa, right? To help people get to the place that they'd like to go. But, to kind of segue off of the fact that, yes, we have a unique opportunity to help people create, wealth through these structures is a privilege, right? And my favorite thing to do is to run the calcs on what the CMAs are after we've built a home in a community, and I know exactly how much they've paid for the land and how much they've paid for the build. And to see them walk away with equity day one, that's fun. You know what's funny? That happens on about 85 to 90% of our projects. I mean, sometimes we don't have CMAs to compete against, right? A home that's built to the nature in which we've designed it and then executed, there may not be one like it. And that's common, but when you build something and it's in such a way and you've got a comp market out there, that's a true wealth driver. And I think being able to give that to clients and the home is really that's cool.
Yeah, I think there's that concept of pride of ownership, but there's the pride of building it. We'll have to come up with a better phrase. But once upon a time, I knew this painter. It was like second generation. And, he's painting his houses. It was a father son team. And the father would look at him when it was all done and say, would you put your name to this? And then, the son would go, well, okay, maybe I miss it. And he would look at him again and say, would you put your name on this? And so he passed on this idea of tradition and taking pride in the work that you do, which all
Hmm.
too often I think shortcuts creep in and you can have this beautiful, $10 million home in your case, but it's those little things that you miss that they will remember forever.
Oh, 1,000%. Like I hate to say it, but I'm a builder. I do this when I walk other homes that other like parade homes. You go through them and you're looking at them and you're sizing them up. It's inevitable. We do this in this craft as we do this, but I tell my project managers all the time, my builders, I say you need to be thinking about the next guy all of the time. If someone came in to remodel this house next week, we finished it, and they hire a different contractor, what is that contractor going to tell the homeowner? Right? Like, you better be thinking about that because if you got a skeleton in that wall, only that skeleton exists sometimes. Don't let any of them exist. You want them to have nothing but great things to say.
Is there anything, I'll say, unique about a Bradford home that if I were to walk into it, I would see subtle little things? Let me give you an example. There was a builder here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and his little signature thing was he would paint onto the trim a little mouse hole with a mouse eating cheese. And he did that throughout the house, and I thought that was so cute, but that was his signature stamp, if you will, of all the custom homes that he did. So you'd walk by, wait a minute, is that a mouse? No, he painted a mouse eating cheese. And I don't mean something so comical, but is there something that is definitely unique about what you do?
First off, that's very creative, and kudos to him for that. Nothing as whimsical as that in a Bradford home. We, in our spec product, are working towards having our own trim line. So, when you walk into a Bradford home, you'll notice when you look at the base and the door casing, for instance, assuming that the interior designer didn't ex-nay that out of the plan. But as a standard, our homes do have a similar style, and there's somewhat of a profile that we take. It's a little bit of a nickel gap inside of a top and bevel profile, but it's just something that says like, hey, this isn't a standard part that is ever present around the entire home. That's something that I care about a lot is the millworks and the finish, right? Coming from the trades, where drywall and painting were my life for so many years, I'd rather walk through a house blindfolded than I would with eyes wide open, transparently. I want to feel the substrate. I want to feel the surface because that's how I'm going to understand quality. I can feel every hump and every crown and every stud if I just hold my hand against the wall tight enough. And I can feel the same of the quality of the finish of the paint by walking around in the dark after the lacquer undercoater has been sanded. I know exactly where everything's at. But, you know, those are the things that are a bit unique to me because I come from the finish trades. I would suggest that the finish trades make, you know, all of the difference in these homes a lot of times.
I'm just going to scribble some notes here. Never invite Brad to my house. I live in a 150-year-old train station, so yeah, there's cracks, there's splits. Man, you would, yeah, we'd have to put you in traction and carry you out, I think.
Hey, I don't judge anybody else's house, just the ones I build.
All right. Let's rewind for a second. I want to put it in reverse, go back to your first business when you were doing what you did through '08 and until it recovered. Did you already have, how do I say this, a business acumen in that you were growing a business that you could sell? Or was it by happenstance that you had a bunch of tools and stuff lying around and that was what you sold?
No, I sold the business. It's funny because in high school I had a mentor who he was a regional operator for Papa John's pizza restaurants. And watching the systems and the processes of a franchise business gave me a behind the scenes glimpse into what it takes in order to make a brand successful at scale. And transparently, I got to focus more on the marketing efforts that this operator was executing on a monthly, a weekly, and I saw how he was coming into the community, that each new community specifically that he would enter into, and I got to watch him stand each unit up independently. And I had a front row seat and a business owner's sitting in the back of his truck for years, understanding how to create business. It, I never looked back. I was marketing first from that point forward. I always have leaned into the marketing piece of business. And I firmly believe I'll be transparent. I had to hone my sales skills into what they are today. But what I also realized is the better I got at marketing, the less I needed those honed skills because I am looking to create confidence before I ever communicate with my client for the very first time. I want them to feel trust. I want them to feel familiarity. I want them to feel like I have the aspirational product that they want to buy. So, enabling each of these businesses that I've created to do that, coming in and just being myself and genuine, there is no such thing as sell anymore. I don't sell anything. I have something that they want to buy because I've already educated them. And so when they meet me with me, it's, do we think we can get along for a couple years? If that's the case, then typically we're in good shape.
Oh man, you're giving me so many avenues to get off on here. First, let's go back to just the business acumen. You said the magic words that you're working on the business and not in it. So you knew early enough that if you work in the business, that means you've created a job for yourself.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you're working on the business, you've got the mind already that, okay, I'm trying to create systems so I can step back and ultimately this pig is going to run on its own. And now I've got something tangible to sell. So again, I'll use that word kudos on you for recognizing that so early. Because what I find the tragedy is you'll see a builder that has put his whole life into what he does. And at the end, there's no way to get out.
You know, I'm going to say something controversial. And, you know, I do not believe that it takes 30 years to become a master at anything. I find that if you put your mind to it and you do get enough reps in, that, you know, 10,000 hours is about as good as you need to do anything perfectly. And that's statistically bound. That's not my stat, that's science based. If you need more than 10,000 hours to do something at a master level, maybe you should try something else. So I don't subscribe to this notion that just because you have 30 years of experience that you ultimately have more skills than the guy at 10,000 hours. So again, controversial. I know people will come out of the woodworks for me to tell me that I'm wrong on that I can't take away 30 years of experience, but here's the thing, man. What we're doing is not rocket science. We are simply put cobbling things together and making them look really well and making them live in a durable fashion for hopefully hundreds of years. And I can understand the nobility behind that when we talk about craftsmanship, but there are more people talking about craftsmanship as a marketing word than they are actually living it. So let's be real about that. I just believe that if you work hard enough at something and you put enough focus at it that you can learn something in an amount of time that is reasonable enough for you to start focusing on something else and rounding out your portfolio or your resume. That's just my take on it. So why people choose to spend 8 hours a day working in the business and 2 hours on it, for me, well, maybe you just love working on the tools, and that's okay. That's completely okay. Maybe you don't need to own a business. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. And I think we need to get to a place where we're okay saying that. Like, you know what? I prefer a really healthy work life balance. I did not choose the path of entrepreneur, and I'm okay with it. I wish people would just call a spade, but some people are wired different.
Piggyback on what you just said, that it's not for everybody. This takes me back to high school and university. And which puts us in the dilemma that we're in right now, that there are so few trades. For every five that are retiring, only one new person is coming in. And I think we sold this generation on the fact that, well, you should go to university and get some worthless degree. You have no idea what you want to be when you grow up, but go spend 250,000, off you go. And if you can't do something, then they kind of direct you to the trades. And yet you go into the trades, you're getting paid day one when you're in school, you're getting paid. You graduate completely no debt. And within a few years, you've got your ticket as an electrician, a plumber, whatever that is. A couple of years on top of that, you could be owning and running your own company. Why that guy with the degree in dance theory, he'll probably be the one that cleans your pool and babysits your kids.
He
Right?
will be. Yeah,
Yeah.
anybody with a liberal arts degree and a, who can paint with a brush. I mean, there's plenty of work for you. It's just not going to be doing it and selling it in a gallery. You're going to be selling it on somebody's wall in their kid's room, and that's okay.
Let me throw this at you. As you were going through your paces, you mentioned that you had a mentor, which was the guy from Domino's Pizza. Were there mentors on the building side that were really willing to invest in you time-wise and say, "Come over here, young grasshopper, let me show you how it's done"?
I did, yeah, and I was very fortunate in that regard too. But I was always the one to ask. I was never afraid to ask people, "Hey, there's a gap. There's a gap that exists with me and this information, and I'd love if you'd help me fill it." Like, I don't know why people just don't ask for help. I was always the first to say, you know what, I'm really curious about this. And if I could just shadow you for a bit of time and you can help explain some answers, I'll promise I'll stay out of your way. But I'd love it if you just gave me some info. Let me learn. Let me just shadow you. Like, people will say yes. Or, hey, do you care if we have a standing call every Friday for 30 minutes? And if I bought you coffee, would you just give me a little bit about this world? Because I'm trying to learn everything about it. You'll find most people love talking about themselves, love talking about what they do, and don't mind passing some knowledge down to a younger generation. I'm fortunate at this point to be able to provide coaching services to other builders. And the reason I do that is because I know how important it is for people to be able to give back and to be able to pass as much of this down as we can. The 5-to-1 ratio is not getting any better. And one of the most proud partnerships that I have going into 2026 is with the Home Depot and the Path to Pro network. They have done and made a monumental stride in helping get people into the trades and to help showcase that it is an attractive profession and a noble profession and one where you can make a good living and have a great life. And I think that it's equally as important that employers like myself and other builders know that that platform exists so that they can go to it and they can find good talent, hungry talent that's ready to go to work. I think we need more companies doing like what Home Depot's doing and sharing this message. I think that it's really important that we get more than a 5-to-1 ratio really quick, or we're going to find ourselves, I might be actually wrenching some piping soon.
First of all, thank you for being the kind of guest that just cues me up with questions. Like, it's awesome. I don't even have to think. It just, okay, here's what Brad said. I'm going to repeat it. Tell me more about this Home Depot program because I've heard nothing about it.
Yeah, so the Home Depot Path to Pro program was brought about by some amazing people internally in their organization who wanted to shine a spotlight on the way that the education system is bringing people into the workforce and to showcase a gap where the trades are, like you say, being treated as a secondary thought, as a backup plan. And their goal was to showcase that no, it shouldn't be that way. We should actually pour into and invest into this community of people who need some help getting a start in it. But we also need to re envision how the school systems are positioning the trades. And it should be just like any other option. Trade schools should be promoted just as equally. But the problem is if, and they're doing the good work on Capitol Hill and trying to get the education system recalibrated so that they can do that. Right now, college is positioned first. Teachers are incentivized in the number of kids they put into secondary schools. And quite frankly, it's a problem that we have to solve there first. And I'm just so thankful that they're there doing that work and they have the power and the horsepower and the resources to do it. So, I just give a huge hats off to them. I'm an Atlanta native. I can't help but speak great things about them because they're an Atlanta-based community and they've done so much for us. But they're continuing to do that on a day-to-day basis.
Is that a nationwide project or just in Atlanta?
It is, and I encourage every listener on here who's U.S. based, even I think, and they're dipping their toe into the Canadian market too. But it is the Home Depot Path to Pro program, and people can go to it and take courses and get training, and it actually becomes a portal, like a hiring portal, where they can showcase their skills, and employers and folks and builders can go onto that platform and actually hire directly from it.
Just so I'm clear, is this a curriculum that they bring into the high school or is this something that's running concurrently?
They're running it through their website right now, but they're trying to build awareness that the program exists. And so, that's one of the ways that I'm connecting with them as we go into IBS this year. We're trying to get the word out. We're trying to share that Home Depot has this available for people and for the builders and the entrepreneurs that own businesses. We want those people to understand that it's there for them so that they can find people. We oftentimes talk about, well, good help is hard to find. Well, look no further than the people who are motivated to the point to go take courses that are being provided to them and get some training. And they're here ready to be hired, ready to go right now.
There's a concept, synchronicity. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I guess if I melted it down, the universe will provide if you're open to it. I think you and I are going to be friends for a very long time here. Why I say this is for the past week or two, I've been trying to work. So I'm holding up her card here, Renee Zentz, and she's with Careers in Construction in Colorado. And she's doing exactly what Home Depot is doing. They're bringing the curriculum right into the high school and they're getting funding to do it. And I interviewed Jen Tobin, who's the president and CEO of National Association Home Builders. And, we were going back and forth and, I brought this concept in that we need to, A, create that nobility again, the nobility factor. This is a great trade. And he says, Michael, there is nothing like a young person when they have a power tool in their hand for the first time. It just lights them up to the possibility of what they can do. The problem is we don't give them that opportunity because we've taken shop class out. And this is part of what Renee is doing in Colorado. And so I'm kind of exposing it before it should be, but you and I can talk about this in detail. She already has this thing working in Colorado, and every year she'll have about 500 graduating students. And there's more, but graduation by default means that they have now been offered employment. So
Love that.
500 people every year are stepping out of high school and they're guaranteed a job. So what we're trying to do, and with Sound Capital, and I'm trying to pull a bunch, I don't want this to be a single flag, because this is an initiative I want to take across the country. What if we could raise enough money and at retail it would be $500? And if we got somebody like Home Depot in, well, we can cut that in half. But for one of these students that graduates, they're going to need boots, they need a helmet, they need all this stuff to get started. But they have to make it through the first month. Because we know high school kids will get in, it rains. Oh, I didn't know I'd be working outside. I'm going back to McDonald's or my parents' basement. But for the ones that actually stick it out, I want to be able to create this, I don't know, 1,000 swinging hammers, whatever that is, that we can get business behind. And again, it's not about ego. It's about survival, man, because if we don't have new people coming into the industry, like look out to the future 10 years. Oh yeah, AI's coming. We're going to have robots. They're not going to climb up on a roof. So unless you're doing manufactured homes 24/7, maybe that's the future. I don't know. But as long as you can turn a wrench, hammer a nail, run electrical, like you will have a job forever. So I want to be able to get behind these kids. And the analogy, and I'm going off, pull back on my strings if I'm talking too much. It's akin to, when you sponsor somebody overseas, here's somebody in their little hut in an African village. I don't mean to make light of that, but I believe that we have to start at home. Charity begins at home.
1,000%. thousand
And then
percent.
once we're
And
strong as a country, then we can afford to reach out. But it, so perfect example. Look, I see somebody drowning. I jump into the water. Oh, wait a minute. I don't know how to swim. But I don't realize that until I am now drowning and somebody has to fish both of our gnarly corpses out of the water. Okay. Where I'm going with this, I think it'd be awesome if we can collaborate. And I know I'm taking up too much time here, but I'm putting it out there. The idea would be that we sponsor a kid that's graduated and we deck them all out. He's got the full garb, and the person that made that sponsorship now has a picture. And now they have an interaction and they know personally that I have set somebody on their career path. And it's not
love
a
that.
self-interested thing. In a sense, it is, because you're building a home for maybe my kids, my grandkids, so that America does have a future.
I love it. I mean, that's a little different than what I think Mike Rowe Works is doing. Like everyone's familiar with Dirty Jobs and Mike Rowe, and I love him to death. He's one of the many reasons that I created the Bradford Blueprint, which is our coaching platform. It's my podcast platform, and it's the place where I get to try to encourage and to influence folks to get into the business. But what he's doing is he's actually giving scholarships to trade schools. And I think that's amazing. Like I would love to be able to do that. And we've been looking at a way to give back from the business perspective. And we're not necessarily going to create a foundation. I think we're looking to find a foundation to give to. But I think that construction companies should be keenly focused on where it is we need to place dollars in order to invest in our future. And I think sometimes even like from our perspective and smaller builders, right? Like I would look at us as like a mid-size, mid-tier builder in the country and the way that I look at us and what we do. But we have to take a chance and we have to actually hire these people. Like that's really where the rubber meets the road. And, you know, hiring can be an investment because you know, you might have to work through a couple of folks in order to get to the right person that fits your business because not everybody's going to be able to stick it out. We know that, these young people are learning earlier in their lives. And like you said, they may not want to work in the rain. They may not want to be uncomfortable. But for those who make it, those are the guys you really want to keep forever because you know that they really just love it for what it is they do. And a lot of people just love to create. Like, I want creators in my organization. Like, that's probably one of the most important things that I can find and attract are people who just love to create. Whether that's design, whether that's with their hands, whatever it is, I want creators in this environment, in this building.
You should pull that back. That concept about the creators. I interviewed a builder in California. He does about 800 doors a year. And at the tender age of 29, he had a heart attack.
Oh.
And it was from just doing everything. And actually, a year prior, he twisted his ankle somehow, and there was an infection that started to grow or a blood clot, and he didn't even know about it. And he
Mm,
just started feeling lightheaded, tight in the chest at 29, and literally he's seeing the face of God. And God is tapping him on the well, not tapping him at that point, he's slapping him in the head and saying, "There's gotta be a better way to do this." And that's when he hired his first project manager. And so, I think you will appreciate this because what he did, he went down the traditional path. I'm putting an ad, wherever on bulletin boards, urinal pucks, anywhere that people are going looking for a project manager. And what he discovered is going back to your point about experience, I've been in it for 30 years. Everybody looks great on paper. They look great on paper. They were the hardest people for him to integrate into his culture because he has a company culture. And having somebody that isn't going with you is almost like a cancer and it will get out of control and bring everything down. What he was looking for is I want somebody that's enthusiastic, that's willing to learn and willing to ask questions. The rest I can fill in the gaps. And what he's done now is he takes his project manager under his wing, teaches him the way he wants things done. And then it's kind of like Kung Fu and Grasshopper, Master Grasshopper. That project manager gets to the point now where Adrian can step back and say, I'm hiring another guy. It's your job. You teach him.
love it. Love it. Yeah. I mean, I have a different approach to that, but I mean, that's no fault to that builder. I think that, standard operating procedures is what creates consistency. Again, going back to my first stint in a franchise business and understanding how rigid those processes and standards are. Maybe in some ways I have scaled in that way where, project manager number one was really the karate kid, almost where you're going to teach him. But, I find that when everybody is marching to the beat of the same drum, that is what gets things done. And now, and maybe that's just because of my size and I've forgotten what it's like to only have one PM. Now that I've got five and six, and we're growing again this year, and it's incredible to think that there's going to be seven builders in this building, and I, how that is. It's wild because how do you keep the consistency? That's my biggest fear, or what keeps me up at night is like every one of these guys has to be doing the same thing. So they're measured on the same KPIs. They get given the same aptitude tests, they get given the same personality profiling tests, and they get given the same SOP. And then their KPIs are all measured the same. So that's how I've found to do it. But again, it's not just one guy or two at this point.
Is there a vision that you have for the company? A corporate vision, that sounds too stuffy, but let's say Brad's vision and how we do things. And if you have that, how do you instill that into your PMs and all the way down the line? And how do you keep it consistent that they buy into it and believe in it?
I think and I don't believe that I'll ever have an absentee owner's mindset. As all my ventures began to take me in different directions from, being central to this business on a day-to-day basis, I always find my way back to our Wednesday culture meeting. So we have a standing meeting every week. And in that meeting, the first thing we do is each person on the team tells their win for the last week. And we share in a success and we share a struggle sometimes. And we get back together. And then I always leave them with a piece of my mind, I guess, which is really to say, here's where we're advancing towards our goals. Here's where maybe we need some work. But hey, look, here's a little bit of the outlook as well. And I do that every single Wednesday, and it keeps us in lockstep. And then, I have some amazing managers in my organization between my director of operations and our CFO and the pre construction manager. And they all are carrying the message to the individual members of their teams. And so it doesn't dawn on me that they're doing a lot of that work for me at this point. But I think that making sure that my leadership team is really in tune with my message. I had a wake up call probably a year and a half ago where I was told to my face that I am very quick to share my vision, but I am not quick to make sure that everyone understands it. And since that day, whenever that was, and it was identified, I've made sure to change my tune and to get more granular so that they do understand that vision, and that's helped tremendously.
Wow. We're talking about a philosophy. Let's dig down into there's a phrase that you use, ego driven building science. Let's unpack that. Tell me more about that.
Oh, I know I'm going to have so many people love me for this, but yeah, so I believe that we've got an issue before us. Not to suggest that the people that are building for the reasons of building science aren't doing it for the right reasons, but I just would like to suggest that I think that we need to reach deeper to understand why it is we build. And so building science for the builder's ego is just that. We're focused on building it tight, but why? We're focused on blowing a zero ACH, but why? We're focused on utilizing new advanced products to create an outcome for the structure, but why? And if the answer to each one of those whys is not for the benefit of the owner, not necessarily just their wallet, because the average person lives in their house 15 years. So, is there a quantifiable ROI to blowing that zero ACH for the first owner who paid whatever he paid? Is it justifiable? I would suggest that if we're going to build and dig into building science, we should build for human biology and for the benefit of our longevity, for our health, for our wellness, and creating an environment that is designed to allow us to live at our peak. That should be our why as builders. So it's not an argument. I think that the builders genuinely care about their trade or than their craft and being the best builder out there, but we shouldn't build just to be the best builder. That's my
I, I,
point.
I guess that word best, it's a nebulous term because best related relative to what? Relative to what? To your
Exactly.
point about we make all these advancements in build technology, then you find when you talk about sealing in the home, at one point, okay, the whole idea was let's keep the heat in. Let's keep the heat in and make it 100% energy efficient. Well, what did we find out after? Well, the carpets are off gassing. There's off gassing coming, and people are getting sick and dying. Dying is the extreme, but people are getting sick. All right, so maybe it's not a good thing. Oh, by the way, when there's no airflow coming in, things start to rot. Okay, but okay, and you find out after the fact. What I've discovered now, there's two laneways that have opened up, and I suspect that you're playing on both teams here. One is the performance home. The other concept is the healthy home. Are you an advocate of both, or do I have to? You're probably be able to explain them better than I can.
Yeah, I think that building for performance is it's the floor. It's not the ceiling. I think that we should be building our homes to last for a prescriptive amount of time. That should be the starting point, right? Like we're building this home because we want it to endure 100 years. Let's just start there. 100 years seems reasonable for an investment of that size, I would say, depending on the home. But what does that entail? Well, a dry home, a tight home, right? We think about tightness first. Most people think about tightness first. And tightness gives us the ability to do what? Well, it gives us the ability to control water intrusion. Water intrusion, obviously, the number one factor of why things go south in a home. So, if we're building for tightness, and that can involve water and air, the second element in being air is we want to control the indoor air quality. That's the other piece of it, right? But when we do that, and then we try to use spray foam, and then everybody, the word gets out, and then all of a sudden everybody's spray foaming for the sake of spray foaming. And then, well, what happens like in Florida when you oversize your mechanical systems? You got mold behind your walls because you got condensation happening behind the walls, and you're totaling out houses just because somebody said so, just because somebody said that was the best way to do it. Again, it's building for ego. We're building for ego, but we're looking for shortcuts. People are looking for shortcuts just for the sake of saying we blew a lower number or we built it tighter. They're not building for the reason, again, of I want that indoor air quality to be cleaner. I want it to be better. I want it to allow my homeowner to feel a sense of clarity that the 22,000 breaths that they're going to take every day in that house is not going to be filled with particulate matter that's going to make them sick. All right. And then the same thing can be said for the water. One of the things we put a we slap a PRV valve in there, and then we throw it to the wind. Whatever the city municipal water is good enough, right? Like that's beyond me, especially in a luxury environment where we see that every day. Hey, let's spend $12,000 on a water stone and let's not condition that water and see how fast the guts of that thing rot out. Right. So it's beyond me. They're just not thinking about the why behind it. We're focusing either on the aesthetic or we're focusing on the performance. And we think the performance is, what does it give us? Well, sometimes it gives us an energy credit. All right, cool. I get it. Me and you as builders, I get it. You're getting those Energy Star credits. There's money to be made. You're going to do whatever is mandated by the government in order to get that. Cool. I'm not going to fight you on that. But you didn't do it for the homeowner. You didn't do it for the grid either, really. Right? And those are the things that we can focus on. Well, I just believe, again, let's shift the focus back to the homeowner. And I think that the new frontier of building is truly building for the biological. Building for the reason we build houses to start with, the human that's living inside of it. And, oftentimes it only is brought up whenever our clients have some kind of, condition around an allergen, or they're asthmatic, or there's a reason why they're having to build that way to start with. But, we can control a lot of things if we create a standard where we're really giving the human condition the spotlight.
Brad, help me understand this. So you're talking about the biological home, like build biological home. There's the other pathway, which is they're calling it the healthy home. And they have a checklist. Here's all the things you need, and you'll get, I don't know if it's a certificate. Brian Johnson has been leading this out of Arizona, and there's a bunch of people. I don't know if you know them. And if you want a connection, I'll definitely help you with that. How do you articulate what you're saying here? Because this is the gospel according to Brad, how you're building your home. How do you articulate that to a potential buyer that this is actually a buying feature? And then obviously they're thinking about retail down the road when they move. Does that also become a transferable feature as a selling feature when they go to sell?
Absolutely, it does. And now we're starting to measure ROI beyond dollars and cents, though, as well. So, to the educated client who is focused on optimizing their life in every single way, right? Like, you have to look at who would purchase a home like this to start with. And you've got to start with people who are more than likely going to be high performing individuals who are looking at optimization in a way that allows for them to really excel in whatever it is they're choosing to do. And so by looking inward at one's health, you might be considering optimizing your health. And there are people out there that love to biohack. They're working on ways to improve, and they're thinking about what their optimal resting heart rate looks like. They're looking at how much sleep they're getting at night. They're looking at what sleep optimization looks like, and they want to create an environment that allows for that to take place. And so then you might also consider how well you're managing your cortisol, because we know cortisol plays a very important factor in how we feel every day. And cortisol spikes impacts the amount of body fat we retain. There are so many different reasons behind it. And well, how do you control those things elementally? So what we did is we created a standard that we called the Bradford Elemental System. And we began to focus on the three core elements that we can control. And I start with light. Light is one of the most impactful elements that we have the ability to control in the built environment today. And to give you an example, lighting is about, the lighting system inside of our homes is about 50% of the weight in terms of how we quantify, how we control light. And then light control in the form of shades and window coverings gets the other 50%. And if you control the time of day and the color temperature and the lighting or the spectrum of lighting that you allow to be emitted in a home, as well as in conjunction with the amount of light you let in naturally, you can control some things like cortisol. You can begin to control how your body wakes and how your body begins to wind down. And you'll find there's a direct correlation between the sleep performance and the cortisol reduction as being a reason that you can suggest that, well, if you did this consecutively over many, many, many years, you would get more years, right? That is a positive ROI, in my opinion. I would suggest that more life or better life it has some value. And I would suggest that I don't need more birthdays. I would just prefer better ones. And what I also would love to do is be able to somewhat dictate what my marginal years are going to be like. And so as I begin to think about the last 10 years or 15 years of my life, I begin to reverse engineer backwards into how am I living today that's going to allow for me to live better then? So we can control our diets. Those are great things. But let's start controlling the lighting in our environments because those have a major impact on how we're feeling every single day. And not many people know this, but with the advent of LED lighting and creating this blue and green spectrum at all hours of the day, we're artificially impacting things like our cortisol in a negative way. And so I rebuke this idea that we should just put as much lighting into this environment as we possibly can for the sake of illumination without any direct correlation back to the biological. So that's foundational element number one. Again, air being number two. We put a very thin 1 inch micron filter on our HVAC systems as a standard in America. Like typically the filtration that's happening is is infinitesimal compared to what we should be doing, right? We have the ability to put MERV 16 filtration, units on our air handlers. We're able to control particulate microns and organics through UV light. We're able to do so much these days with the air that we're circulating throughout the pocket. Why don't we do that? Wouldn't we breathe better if we weren't breathing in dirty, contaminated air? Well, okay, now then think about the envelope. Now the envelope becomes important because now I'm leaking air into my environment and I cannot control that, right? So if I'm building my house with 7/16 OSB, it's passing through fiberglass insulation and then, you know, standard southern yellow pine in my market, and then through drywall and maybe some paint, which is going to have some minor VOC off gassing. Well, it just traveled through a board that was treated with formaldehyde. Who knows what that's got inside of it? Yeah, fiberglass isn't much, but I think not. I think I'd pass. I'd still pass. So that's why I build tight. And ultimately, in doing that, I'm going to keep water out. So, and I'm not creating an environment where mold could become present. So I think about that. And then water. Like water is so important. How much of it do we put in our bodies every day? We're made 65 to 70% of it, but we're cool with taking anything from whatever municipality gives us, and that's good enough. Well, I don't know. Flint taught me a lot of lessons, but I don't know. That's my philosophy. But if you compound all these things together and you do that over many years, I believe that the person that is living in that home is going to live longer and they're going to have better years, and that is what we're truly should be building for.
Yeah, I definitely think you're the right person at the right time with the right toys. And all those things have to collide. I would love to put you into a room with Lauren Rade, Brian Johnson, and just a box of crayons and see what you guys come up with because you're speaking exactly the same language. For Brian, it was he's got a test development that he's building right now in Sedona. And it's exactly what you're talking about. The whole idea of your circadian rhythm, cortisol, which is the killer, and more studies are being done on longevity, and we're seeing the direct correlation between cortisol will deplete muscle mass as you're getting older. We have to eat more protein. If you were not sleeping properly, cortisol spikes at night. You have to regulate the temperature, make it cooler so you sleep better. As you said, it's got to be a dark cave like atmosphere because we sleep deeper. All these things that we kind of take for granted. I would say once upon a time we knew all this, but forgot about it because technology took us down a different path. So, yeah, side note, I'll reach out with your permission, introduce you to these two kids. I think you'd have a blast.
I'd love to.
Absolute blast.
Yeah, so, Bradford, the company that I own, we're the first in the Southeast as a residential company to become a member of WELL, which is it's the Institute of Well Building. And so they have a certification much like LEED that you can put on a residential project, and we're in the process right now of having our first home certified WELL. Not only are we going for the health and safety aspect, we're going for well V2 on the platinum side. So we're on the precipice of having this home inspected. It's a verifiable third party inspection based on our scorecard that was presented from our design and engineering. That's who I give a tremendous amount of credit to. Once you've designed and built one of these homes, which was our lab house number 2 technically, but we were fortunate to be able to put this into an ICF structure, which gave us a little bit more leeway because transparently we were able to accomplish a 1.3 ACH before insulation, which was tremendous. So we know that post foam, post drywall, and sealing this thing in, we're probably going to be somewhere around the 0.6 ACH at completion. So that's significant. But we've got multiple ERV systems in this house, multiple filtration systems on this house. And, one thing I'm happy to report back is that, the indoor air quality index in this house should be, you know, in my opinion, we're going to be low 101 on the East Coast and the Southeast.
Cool. Let's do a lane change here and let's talk about every builder's favorite topic, which is money. Let's talk about your relationship to money. And this is more pertinent, I think, as you're leaning into the production side of what you're going to do, or spec side. I've been chastised by many builders to stop saying spec. It's production is the word that they prefer. So we know what we're talking about, the same thing here. Let's pretend that you could just take the brakes off. No limitations whatsoever. Money's not an object. You don't have to worry about permits, planning, because usually regulators get in the way and hold everything back. If you had a wide open highway, no brake pedal whatsoever, what would your business look like?
The funny part is it looked just the same. I think we are honed in. We are right where we want to be. We have niched into this and nuzzled into this nice little corner that we love to occupy, which is us building homes for the right reason. I think if I had, an unlimited checkbook, I think what I would choose to build, I would begin to refine some of the concepts even further and play with, concepts around EMF cages. And I would get to play with some different sound attenuation techniques. And I would be able I would be able to play in some lanes where it's hard to find return on investment right now without it being a very, very select few and a very small crowd that would purchase a product like that. Now, unless you live next to a set of train tracks, you might be more attracted. But I would continue to build maybe more for the stylistic approach that I prefer. Building custom homes for others ends up leading me into directions of building multiple styles that sometimes I get to delve into that aren't native to you know the builds that I've done in the past, and those are always fun. I do somewhat lean a little bit more to the contemporary modern side, and I love things like cantilever and I do get a little boxy at times, but I really love post-industrial modernism and some voicey design. So I'd play more with shapes and I would play more with be a little bit more light and airy from a design perspective. So, because I love the curvature of homes at times and love barrels and I love round shapes. And we don't get to play with those anymore as we value engineer the snot out of everything these days. And, when you are building production or you're building speculative homes, outside of a select area or maybe outside of a select development, you may not get to play with those shapes as often as you want. And so I don't know. Maybe it's geometry would be where I'd go first.
I think if you came to my place, you'd see that straight lines are optional in
Love
terms
that.
of, yeah.
I love that.
Uh, as I said, it's a 150-year-old train station. And what started off as a little bathroom reno, because I was on a speaking tour across California, and the hotels that we stayed at had those rain shower heads. So when I came home, I said, "Oh, I really want one of these." And when we opened up the ceiling, there were 13 junction boxes within an area of about 5 by 7, 13 junction boxes. And then as we started pulling that octopus out and opening up other walls, it grew. Um, into a 4-year project. So it was kids with money, but with no adult supervision. I'll send you some pictures. I think you'll get a kick out of this. Let me ask you
I
this,
bet.
getting still on the spec side. You have the perfect project that you see. Either somebody's presented it to you or you see a piece of land and you want to jump on this. How do you fund that thing? Do you do it with house money, bank money, private money? What's that magic sauce, if you will, or formula that you put together to make that happen?
Every deal is different and every deal in a specific time frame is different, right? Like I can say that on some speculative deals, like especially the early days, I'm not against lending or borrowing. I'm very pro debt to do these deals and spreading risk. But I did a lot of it out of pocket at first, and there were a lot of smaller projects. Like some of my build to rent product that I have and I keep for myself. I self fund or I've leveraged hard money at times for those deals because depending on the cycle time, I'm willing to pay whatever the premium is to do it that way. Now, as I've become slightly more sophisticated, I won't give myself a ton of credit. I have begun to learn new techniques on how to fund projects and transparently because of the size of the projects I'm taking on, banks are not typically interested in engaging in deals where you might be over 4 or 5 or 6 million dollars. And in a lot of cases, I am. Are the projects that have presented opportunity to me in these developments, they're north of that number. And as you well know, you may find a great equity partner that's willing to do, the equity piece of the deal, but you're probably looking at 70% LTC on something like that. So you still have a large nut that you got to bring to the table on a 6 million, $7 million deal. And so what I did is I said, well, I have a deal pipeline right now of about $120 million worth of projects that I'm ready to take on, that I have access either with LOI or I own the lot, I have the designs done, whatever that is. I said, I need to have access to a lot more capital and I need to have the ability to move that capital when I need to move it. So I developed a private equity fund and I stood up Bradford Equity Partners and I have raised capital transparently to more institutional investors who are looking to maybe move their money out of the market that's been a bit tumultuous as of late and move it into ultra high net worth individual, in that space where those folks are buying real estate. And so, when you've got a 7 to 10 million dollar home, those folks aren't typically interested in, yeah, if it's $7 or $10 million, they may not be persuaded by whatever the interest rate is at the time. So they're buying and selling no matter what is happening in the economy. Let's be real. You just have to design a compelling product. And that's something that I find that we do uniquely well and have had and been a part of projects where this has been the case. And having successful exits has given us the benefit of being able to do this. And so, going the private equity way has been a lot of learning. But what's great is that the returns for our investors, they're finding tremendous value in it. And I've kind of created my own flywheel of sorts. I keep everything in one manageable ecosystem. And as I continue to develop this, the other component of my private equity fund is that we're buying trades-based businesses and moving more of the business vertically through those. So, think HVAC companies, electrical companies, plumbing companies that I can feed from ultimately the business that I'm creating within it. So I've developed more of a larger ecosystem that I kind of have full control over.
I don't know if this would be of interest to you. Sound Capital, that's our parent company that fuels the podcast in essence. So it's private equity, it's insurance-backed money, and they've got $3 billion at their disposal to use. So a big company, criteria, 680 credit score, no bankruptcy or criminal record, and that you've done 10 homes on title. And after that, it's a wide open ocean. So if that's of interest, we can talk about that later. Let's do another lane change right now. And I'm going to call this rapid fire. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. It's a basic sentence. Fill in the end of the sentence, right? Don't think. Overthinking kills this thing. I'm just going to, like a Gatling gun, just hit you with these. Ready?
Gotcha.
So this is based on production builders, but it could be custom as well. But let's start off with private production builders get into trouble when they
Private production builders. Okay, so we're going back to spec. Have bad CMAs.
Okay. If a builder is over leveraged, the first sales signal I see is
Discounts.
okay. Private builders should use their own capital when
Never.
okay. Let's take this to a more personal side. When I finally get that rare hour to myself, the thing I enjoy doing the most is
Reading.
the one place that helps me reset or think clearly is
The lake.
a book, a movie, or a quote that stayed with me longer than I expected it would.
Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Good one. Good one. If someone really wanted to understand what matters to me, they would need to know that.
They would need to know that integrity is everything.
Okay. What a wonderful, thoughtful gift. As I unwrapped it to my delight, I found a
Check.
a blank one. Okay.
A blank check.
Yeah. Brad, this has been a joy to me. One last question before we land this plane. Legacy. What is it that you're hoping to leave behind?
Oh, that's huge. So it's not a marketing word. It is a truth-bound statement that we are building our homes to be handed down, but I am building this business to hand it down to my next generation. I am hopeful that if I do my job well enough, my children might be attracted to stepping in to fill my shoes at some point in time. Now, I don't know if they're going to be baseball players or builders. That the jury's still out. But something tells me they're coming back home, and I'm excited to welcome them in. Legacy for me means showing them the ropes and letting them continue on the work that I have, not from an ego perspective, right? But in their own way, what they'll do with it, what they'll create next, and what will be important to their generation. And watching that unfold will be kind of a fun ride for me.
That's a cool answer. Anything I missed, Brad? Anything you want to touch upon?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It was a fun conversation.
I think it's been a fun ride, man, to be continued. I think one last thing, if people want to find out more about you, and this will be in the show notes, but give us a quick little plug about where they can find out who you are, where you are.
Yeah, if you want to see our builds, super easy, www.bradfordbuilds.com. If you're more interested about where I'm going to be speaking or on stage next, go take a look at thebradfordblueprint.com. I'm going to be at IBS this year and have an education course that I'm going to be providing on how to market a luxury remodeling company for the NAHB and for the education piece. But I'm also going to be on stage with Tyler Farrell, Joe Christensen, and Dan Houghton, the CEO of Builder Trend, on Wednesday while we're there. Come out and see us, and make sure you stop by the Home Depot's Path to Pro booth as well to check them out.
I'll definitely be there for that. And we're sponsoring the bookstore at the show, and Sound Capital will have a booth there too. So our paths will definitely cross. I'm looking forward to it.
Love that.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.